The Jesse Blake Sports Report with Jesse Blake.
If you have not watched my Central Division preview, go watch that. If you have not watched my Pacific Division preview, go watch that as well. Or listen to it, because you can listen to the Jesse Blake Sports Report wherever you get your podcasts. Or if you choose to watch it, please hit subscribe on the Jesse Blake Sports Report YouTube channel. I appreciate every single subscription. And today, it is not about the West. It is about the Eastern Conference, and we're starting with the Metro Division. Then we'll get to the Atlantic Division a little later. But I mentioned this in the Power Rankings episode for the month of September. I'm not going to be talking about the Columbus Blue Jackets from a hockey perspective. I don't think it's fair to the organization. I don't think it's fair to the players to be talking about, like, hey, what are they going to do on the ice this close to when the tragedy happened? I'm recording this, and it's less than a week removed from when Matthew and Johnny passed away. So I'll just take this moment to just say, the outpouring of support from the sporting world as a whole, but especially the hockey world, has been absolutely incredible to see. Matthew Gaudreau and his family have a GoFundMe. It's at $600,000. That's insane. Seeing all of the tributes from NHL players around the world, around the league, has been just heart-melting to listen to and read. And even like Cole Caulfield changing his number 213 in honor of Johnny. Fabulous stuff. And like, when the puck drops for this NHL season, we're just going to see more of this. And it just speaks to the impact that they had on this game and the legacies that they leave behind, and how deserved all of this is because of their senseless passing. So we're going to continue to talk about this. And when the NHL season gets underway, we're going to see more and more tributes. I hope they retire his number in Columbus and Calgary. They're going to play each other fairly early in the season. I believe it's December. Don't quote me on that. So we're going to get some more tributes there. And then as soon as puck drops in every arena, we should have like some sort of moment of silence or tribute or just honoring for the Gaudreau brothers. So we'll keep tabs on this as it goes along in the months and years that go forward as we move further and away from the horrible night last Thursday. So moving on, seventh place. So we will place Columbus there. We'll place them on the chart in 8. Who knows how that organization is going to play hockey this season. Seventh place, the Philadelphia Flyers. I think they will finish in 7th place. And if you remember last season, the Flyers spent many months, in a playoff spot. They were 3rd in the Metro for many months of the year. And when push came to shove at the end of the season, the Philadelphia Flyers faltered. And obviously you're going to be disappointed if you're a Flyers fan and you were in a playoff spot and you didn't make the playoffs, and it's sad, but you were never supposed to be in that position in the first place. And I'm kind of taking the side on this prediction of where the Flyers will finish in 7th, in that the team we saw at the end of the regular season, I have their numbers here where they ended the season. They ended 7-11-4 in the last 7 weeks of the season. And from earlier in the season, from November to January, just those months there, the Flyers went 15-8-4. That's a better record in that span than the Leafs, Hurricanes, Oilers, Bruins, Kings, and Lightning. The Flyers had a better record than all of those teams and ended up just not making the playoffs at all. And it's largely because goaltending completely fell apart because they were relying on Samuel Ersson, who ended up with an .890, and Cal Peterson, who ended up with an .864 last season. They're relying on those two individuals who are not NHL starting capable goaltenders. And they're relying on them all season long to try and get them into the playoffs because Ivan Fedotov was under the thumb of the Russian government and they wouldn't let him leave Russia until very late in the season, where he came over to North America. He played less than a handful of games for the Flyers. And in those games, he had an .811 save percentage, which you can expect is not going to be great when you've been under the thumb of the Russian government for the last little bit. So now this year, we go into this season, they have a very mixed bunch of individuals. They're not necessarily a young group. They're not necessarily old either. They're very talented forward group, or they're top end players who are going to be the core of this team. Konechny, Farabee, Tippett too, if you want to put him there, and Sanheim. They're all in their like middle ages. They're all in their mid 20s to late 20s, and then you got Michkov obviously, who's going to one day be elite. Trust me. Michkov is going to be an elite player with a capital E in this league one day. I don't think it's quite this season. And they have Jamie Drysdale, who they got in the Cutter Gauthier deal, who I think also will be a very good defenseman for a very long time in the NHL. Are those guys all going to come together this season and play well? Probably not. I think it's going to be more of a mixed bag as we saw towards the end of last season, especially because the goaltending thing that I just talked about, they didn't fix it. Samuel Ersson, Cal Peterson, and Fedotov are still their starting goal, or still their trio of goaltenders. And they're banking on Fedotov being a good starter. They're banking on, hey, we're going to get some competent goaltending here, and maybe that props us back up to where the Flyers kind of think they should be. But I don't think the Flyers should be contending right now. They're building something good. With the guys I just listed, there's a solid foundation of a really good team in Philadelphia. I don't think it's there yet. I think this team is a year or 2 years away from building something solid, and they should continue to do that. And they shouldn't expect to win right now. And I don't think they will winning. It's okay. It's okay to be the Flyers and suck this season. So I think they're going to finish 7th in the division. Next up, a playoff team from last year, but a playoff team with a minus 37 goal differential, the Washington Capitals. And I mentioned the September power rankings I had earlier. Looking at doing these previews and looking at this full team, I really liked the Washington Capitals offseason. Like I was a big fan of the signings that they made. You know, you get Jacob Chikrin. That was in a trade. You get Chikrin. You get Logan Thompson from Vegas. That's a steal. You get Matt Roy on D. Awesome. Awesome little trio of additions there. Love it. But I feel like maybe because I like their July 1st and everything they did this offseason, I kind of overrated them going into the power rankings. And I have them finishing 6th here because I'm not entirely impressed with the overall roster. I think there's definitely still holes on the defense. Like John Carlson's ancient. Ferravari's never really an elite defenseman. Dylan Strome doesn't scream first line center. And Ovechkin at any moment is he's been around the league forever. Who knows how effective Ovechkin will be? Like he's gonna get his goals. He's gonna break Gretzky's record, but overall, who knows what he's gonna be? And Tom Wilson's getting up there as well. There's just so many parts that I'm unsure about with the Capitals, and if they can maintain being a really competitive team. And I know they got like Protas and Connor McMichael and young talent there, but I don't think the young talent is good enough yet to make this team truly a playoff team. And if we're talking about the playoffs, we got to talk about how last season in the playoffs, we're talking about this team being a playoff team. We got to talk about last season when like Lindgren towards the end there had a good little run in the end where he got this team into the playoffs. Like Lindgren was great in the springtime, and that really propelled this team to take the playoff spot that nobody wanted. And they didn't even want it themselves because the Capitals finished the season 4-4-1. And they still 4-4-2, excuse me, 4-4-2, and they still got into the playoffs with that record in their last 10 games. So they didn't even really want this trip to the playoffs. But in the month of April, Lindgren had 2 games where he made over 40 saves. One game he lost to the Leafs where he made, I think it was 42 saves, and then he won that other 40 save performance. So Lindgren really held this team together, and it was impressive to see. But it seems like another paper tiger as the Flyers were, where in a really weak down year for the Metro Division, two weak teams, who the Flyers and the Capitals, were able to maintain a playoff spot. The Flyers fell out. The Capitals stayed in there. And then we saw what it was in the playoffs, where they got demolished in the playoffs because I don't think they're that great. And the additions that I look back on now, they don't scream to me back-to-back playoff years for the Capitals. So I got them in 6th place in the Metro Division. And we're moving on to another team that finished with a negative goal differential and made the playoffs. Last year was really a dark year for the Metro Division. The Devils just threw everything off with them having their just awful season. But the New York Islanders finished with a minus 17 goal differential and got into the playoffs. And I'm the first person to admit, like, New York Islanders fans have been on me for years because we always do our previews in the Steve Dangle podcast. We do our season previews every year. And every single year, I think in recent memory, I think like 3 consecutive years, I've been down on the New York Islanders. One of those years, I might have had them in like 3rd or something in the division, but I've been down on them consistently. And I always hear from Islanders fans because this team always seems to outperform expectations. And it's largely done on great defense and goaltending. They've never been too high scoring of a team. Last year with Varlamov and Sorokin, and I want to say this, I want to point this out. They have probably the best goalie tandem in the National Hockey League because most teams with an elite goaltender don't have an elite backup. And last year, Sorokin faltered. Sorokin was not good, and Varlamov took over the starting job. And Varlamov was a large reason, just like Lindgren carrying the Capitals, that the Islanders got 3rd in the Metro and got them into the playoffs. And Varlamov was excellent. And whenever you have an elite goalie situation like that, your floor is very high. That's why I'm not putting the Islanders down in 6, 7, or 8 in this division, because the Islanders' floor is very good. They're always going to be in it because they have a starting backup to their backup. If Sorokin's elite when he's on his game, I have him in the top 5 in goaltenders in the league when he's on his game. And if he's not on his game, you have a guy in Semyon Varlamov who always seems to step up for the Islanders. I think he's 37 now, but ever since he's been on the Islanders, he seems like he's always been there to catch whatever falls. And like, if you're slipping ahead of me, I'll pick it up. And when you get your game back and I'm not doing it, I'll take a step back and be the backup goalie. So I love their goaltending situation. I'm just not a fan of the rest of the roster. It's a thin defense. The high-end scoring, as I mentioned, has never really been there. I don't see a lot of young players coming up and filling the gaps in the roster that they have. So I have the Islanders in 5th here because I think they can do it with their goaltending, but I don't know if they can excel enough to get into the playoffs. I had wrote this here about the Islanders before they had. I wanted to mention their elite run. I just last point on the Islanders here. I wanted to mention their elite run to get into the playoffs because it was very impressive. They finished 14, 7, and 2. Before that, though, from the beginning of the season to February 29th, the Islanders had the 18th best record in the league, sitting behind the Devils, Flyers, and Red Wings. Like, they were worse than those teams from the beginning of the season to February 29th, and it still ended up in 3rd in the Metro. So it just shows how hot they were come spring, come March onwards to get into the playoffs. And that's legit. Like, I feel like teams that get hot at the end of the season is a lot more, there's a lot more weight there than teams who are hot at the beginning of the season, because we can see any team get hot in October or November and then not maintain it. But if you get hot in the spring when things are actually on the line, I feel like there's something there. So I want to just give the Islanders credit that I think their floor is very high, and I can see them sneaking in to a 3rd, 4th, or 5th spot in this division. But right now I'm saying they land about 5th because the teams ahead of them here, 1 through 4, I just think have more complete teams on their hands. And we'll hop over to number 4, and that's the Pittsburgh Penguins. And I think, like, it's surprising that I have the Penguins in 4th because a lot of people are on the bandwagon of the Penguins are cooked. Since Kyle Dubas got there and his general manager, the Penguins are cooked. But I'm not a believer in that. I'm a believer in, if the Pittsburgh Penguins had any sort of power play last season, they'd be in the playoffs, and none of this talk would be warranted. I have them finishing 4th in this division because last season, their power play was horrendous. It was, if I just look here, the Penguins finished 30th in the league in power play percentage. So that's, I think, I truly believe if they figured out the power play last season, they would have been cool. They had a plus 14 goal differential. And this is via Money Puck. At 5-on-5, the Penguins finished 6th in goals, 2nd in expected goals for, and 4th in shots on goal. Those are all 5-on-5 numbers. So at 5-on-5, they shot the puck a whole bunch, some of the most in the league, and they scored a whole bunch, some of the most in the league. The only problem they had was special teams. And if I got to throw in an and because it wasn't just special teams. Those special teams, the power play, scoring there, and then also their goaltending was horrendous. Tristan Jarry last season had the worst save percentage of his career. He had a .903 save percentage, and his backup, Alex Nedeljkovic, was worse. He had a .902. So this is a team in Pittsburgh with Sidney Crosby, who had an elite season. And I get that the core of the Penguins is now another year older. Erik Karlsson's older, Chris Letang's older, Evgeny Malkin's older, Sidney Crosby is older. The core of this team is now another year older. But I don't believe that their performance is going to fall off a cliff this year. And if it doesn't fall off a cliff this year, you have the exact same team with, I shouldn't say the exact same team, many of the similar parts as last year that now has the task of scoring a little bit more on the power play. Just get the 20th in the league power play and have your goalie not have the worst season of his career. With those things happening, this team finished 3 points out of a playoff spot. I feel like you can make up 3 points by solving these small issues. Better team defense to help your goaltender. Goaltender plays a little better. Keep scoring at the pace you're scoring. Sidney Crosby is going to continue to be good. Everything. Get your special teams in order. Get the power play and penalty kill in order. That's a coaching issue. Like, I'm always of the camp that power play is a coaching issue. It's schematics. It's getting the players to do the right thing while you have a man advantage. You are an NHL player. You should know how to score with an extra body on the ice. So if you're not doing that, it means your coach has you in the wrong places, in the wrong positions. They don't have you doing the right things in terms of what you should be doing on the power play. So if they just, there's the assistants there, along with Mike Sullivan, figure out this power play, get Tristan Jarry a little better. That's my case for the Pittsburgh Penguins. I got them 4th in this division. 3rd place, I have the team that just, they failed miserably in the playoffs. And I think we saw a lot of their true colors come playoff time. And that's the Carolina Hurricanes, who now, this season, are going to be without trade deadline acquisition Jake Gensel. Brady Shea's gone. Teuvo Teravainen's gone, and Stefan Nason's gone. Marty Misha stuck around, so it's going to still, like, the Hurricanes are, I'm down on the Hurricanes because, you know, you lose, what was that, 1, 2, 3, you lose those 5 guys. That's significant. That's very significant to just lose off of your roster in one off season. It's not nothing. But the Hurricanes are still an elite team, but I can't say that they're at the point where I had them last season. Like, I can't say, yeah, the Hurricanes, they'll finish 1st or 2nd in this division. You got to drop them down a little bit because the roster is a little thinner, and that's okay. That's okay for them to be a little thinner now because they were so elite in the previous years, even though they're the style of hockey that they play, the players that they have, they can't score in the big moments in the playoffs, and their goaltending their goaltending a bit disappears. We'll get to that, but their scoring disappears come playoff time. So with this team, you still have Shvesh, you still have Aho, you still have Marty Necas, as I mentioned. It's still you still have Seth Jarvis. I got to throw in Seth Jarvis as well. So the forward group is fine. They're going to be the same. I think they'll have the same offensive output as last year. The D is a lot lighter. Pesce and Shea, those are huge losses. So you can't say that they're going to be at the same elite level, but a lot of what we talk about with Carolina is coaching. the way they're coached is such. We credit team play for a lot of their successes because I think of Rod Brindamore as this elite scheming coach, in that his strategies are great and the way he implements them has the team playing cohesively. So we're going to see it. This season is kind of like make or break for Rod the Bod. It's, what did you have all of the elite players on the back end, or is your scheming for defense just great? And no matter who you have in the back there, you're going to have them playing at a great level. So I'm excited to see that, honestly. I think it's the second one where it's like, no, it's Rod's just great at game planning and getting his team to play cohesively. So we're going to see the Hurricanes maintain what they are as an elite team who's a contender. Hopefully they win a couple rounds, unlike they did this past postseason. But they're still gonna be a playoff team. They're still gonna be a contender. I just don't think they're up there in the upper echelon anymore. I've dropped them out of that tier, and I have them third in the Metro, and I have ahead of them the elite of the elite, and that is the New York Rangers, who I believe, if I'm doing early Stanley Cup picks, they would be my Stanley Cup pick. The New York Rangers. I would have them as my Stanley Cup pick, but I have them second in the Metro simply because they went on a late playoff run last year. Is late the correct word? Late playoff run? Long playoff run, I guess, is a better way to describe it. They went on a long playoff run last year where they battled the Florida Panthers in the Eastern Conference Final. And that takes a toll on the body, on players, mentally and physically. So I don't imagine they're going to be amped up for the regular season. And the main reason I don't have them like winning the President's Trophy, winning the division, but being up there with the Stanley Cup contenders, Jonathan Quick. Jonathan Quick last season had a stretch. I watched a lot of Rangers games last year, and the man did not lose. There was a stretch at the beginning of the year where Jonathan Quick went 9-1. Jonathan Old Man Quick, who LA couldn't wait to get rid of, went 9-1 as the backup in New York. And then to end the season, let me just make sure I have this correct. To end the season, Jonathan Quick went 9-2. So over the course of two stretches, that's 18 plus 20, 21. If you took these 21 games, Jonathan Quick went 18-3. I don't imagine that's going to happen again. I just don't. He's probably going to be decent again. It's going to be all right. He's not going to just be awful. But I don't imagine that over the course of 21 games, he'll be 18-3. Like, it's probably not going to happen. So let's take away a couple points from the Rangers. They don't win the division, but they're one of the best teams in the National Hockey League. And that's because their forward group is elite. And now with the addition of Riley Smith, who they take from Pittsburgh, I think they've solved a lot of what irked them, which was top line right wing. You know, that was kind of a transient position for this lineup last year in the playoffs. They couldn't really settle on a forward group. And hopefully now with the addition of Riley Smith and just having another year of knowing what you have, they can settle on everything. It's going to be fun to watch Rempe in year number 2 after he took over the world. Rempe's going to be fun to watch again. And then the defense, Jacob Trouba was a huge conversation this offseason, them possibly trading him, but he has a no move clause. So and they didn't move him. And then they talked about his wife's residency at medical school, and all of that just took on a whole whirlwind of its own. I think that's largely because he's a New York sports figure and he's making like the daily news in the New York Post. So I don't think that was like a real sports story in the sense it was a sports story, but it was also like a tabloid story. So I didn't want to put too much credence in it. But Jacob Trouba's sticking around, and I hope that by the playoffs and when they come around, they're going to find a middle ground with Trouba's playing, because we saw in the playoffs that he is not who he was in the past. His game has definitely taken a step back, and Trouba needs to find some sort of reduced minute role with this Rangers team if they are going to go on that 4-run playoff run. But they got 82 games to solve it. This season isn't about winning the division, even though like Florida won the division last season, and I never think like, oh, the Stanley Cup teams are going to go that hard in the regular season, but Florida did, and they won the division in the Atlantic, a very tough division. So definitely the New York Rangers could win this division. It's really a toss-up at 1 and 2. I'm not confident in who I have at 1 or 2. I can flip-flop these all day long, but I'm going to say New York finishes second just because they went on the long playoff run. And this team, the New Jersey Devils, are refreshed, are sitting tight, they are revamped, they are ready to take over the world. The New Jersey Devils I have finishing first in the Metro. And it's no, I feel is it hot right now to pick the Devils and just to believe that this is going to be their comeback season? Because let's go over the last couple of years of the Devils, because it has been a true whirlwind, and I think we forget where they're coming from. In 2022, which is not that long ago, that's a couple seasons previous to this one, the Devils finished with 63 points. That's 28th in the league. That's abysmal. And the following season, the Devils had 112 points. They went from 63 to 112. So everybody out there who says it couldn't happen with the Chicago Blackhawks this year, it happened with the Devils. That's an elite glow up, a 1-year glow up. I think it was third in league standings in 2023. And then last season, the season from hell, where the injury bug got them early and often. They fired the head coach, and Lindy Ruff, he couldn't do it anymore. The goaltending fell off a cliff, and everything was a disaster. And this team that went from 63 to 112 now was back down to 81 points and missed the playoffs by 10 points. So now what do we have? We have a revamped New Jersey Devils who has the core of the team that put up 112 points. And now they've added Jacob Markstrom, which is exactly what they've needed for so many years now. Elite goaltending. And you throw Jake Allen as your backup just for safety. They still have Jack Hughes, who's going to be so good. Nico Hischier, who's going to be so good. Timo Meier, who let's just project Timo Meier to be at the best he can be, because there's been at times when they first got him, we're like, oh my God, Timo Meier's not playing that well, and he bounces back. Timo Meier is good, and I feel like when the team is good, they're going to excel with Timo Meier. So I'm betting Timo Meier has a good season. Dougie Hamilton's going to be healthy, which is the key. And now they have Brett Pesce, who they took from Carolina, who we already mentioned. They have everything that they were seemingly missing last season. And even in that 112 season, when they had, even though they were elite, they had flaws, they've seemed to fill those gaps with a guy like Pesce and Markstrom. So I'm excited for what this team can do. And the main reason I think I have them number 1 overall in the Metro Division, Sheldon Keefe. That's the number one reason. That is the number one reason I think they finished first in the Metro. This guy, all his career with the Toronto Maple Leafs as head coach, all he did was win. He was DJ Khaled. And what he's going to do with this Devils team, where he's not going to allow them to take a single night off. He's not going to allow them to play soft hockey. You're going to get bone-crunching, high-intensity hockey out of these New Jersey Devils. And if you add that to the skill that they have, it's a recipe for a very good team to have a very good season. I'm excited to see what Sheldon Keefe does with this roster, because I think he's going to have them playing, as I just said, exceptional hockey. So Devils, I got to pick you number 1 in the Metro for all of those reasons. But I could see you falling to 2 and Rangers having another elite season. I'm kind of flip-floppy on 1 and 2, but that's kind of what I settled on. Yeah, that's my Metro Division preview. Predictions for this upcoming season. Remember, we're going to have full team previews coming out on the SDPN YouTube channel, so go subscribe there closer to the regular season. Let me know what you think in the YouTube comments below. I see a lot of you on the previous previews putting your full standings. I love to see that. Throw them there, and then you can all debate them amongst yourselves. Yeah, continue to tell me that you don't like my picks. If you don't like them, continue to tell me that you do like them if you do. I appreciate every watch and listen that I get. Hit subscribe if you like the video on the channel. That's it. That's it for me. Yeah, that's it. I'll be back very soon with the Atlantic Division preview / prediction. Good night from Toronto.
And that is how it's done.
The Jesse Blake Sports Report with Jesse Blake.
Jesse Blake, the guy that likes to hear his name twice in one sentence. Sure, I know him. No, he doesn't have an ego at all.